So I want to say thank you guys here who are actually watching this live. I also want to say thank you to everybody watching at home on Facebook Live. I'm going to go and welcome our Nikon Canada Ambassador Sam Sciarrino. He's going to be doing a talk today. This is part 2 of the business of photography. He's going to be talking about wedding and specifically on pricing of your wedding shoots. So I'm not going to go into talk about all your accolades because there are so many of them that I could go through for about 5-10 minutes, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
So I'm really just going to say thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys at home for joining us. And I'm going to go and leave it off to Sam.
Thank you. Thank you. Good. Today, what we're going to talk about is how to prep when we're going into a shoot for weddings. What is our mindset? When we're going into photograph weddings, are we actually photographing to sell, or are we just photographing? Photographing is divided into a few different parts, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. But in theory, when we're photographing a wedding, we're actually photographing for a story. So we're actually documenting. We're documenting what's happening there, but we're also going to mix that with some setup portraits. And the mixture really helps because you're actually telling a story throughout the day and you're documenting at the same time. So we're giving them, let's say, a fine art visual portrait. That's something that can hang on the wall. It's something that could be there for a very long time. Let's call it lifetime, which is a cherished piece. At the same time, we're actually photographing to give them a finished, let's say, album that is completely designed. We are working this album, meaning we're going to post-produce it. We're making it so it becomes a work of art that they're going to have this for a lifetime. So how do we prepare ourselves when we're going into a home? Let's say a typical wedding has, you start at home, go to a ceremony, portraits after the ceremony, then you have a reception. How are we going to put this all together so that we can actually have a good storyline and actually think it through as a flow chart? And when we're looking for locations, why are we looking for locations? Are we looking for locations just for the fun of it? Or are we looking for locations to say, hey, we're going to create variety here and we're going to photograph just enough of a whole set in one spot. We find another location, photograph the whole set again. We find another location, photograph the whole set again. But what do we have going against us during a wedding? Right? In most cases, we have time is going against us. Because in most cases, even if you say we want 2 hours to photograph, how many of us really get the 2 hours? We might get half an hour, 45 minutes, depending on the wedding. They might be late, their hair is late, whatever it is. There's always something going on. So we need to photograph enough to create a variety through that day so that you have something to sell. And that's the whole point. So I know many of us are probably trying to sell files only, but if you actually want to make more income out of this, take it to another level where you're actually working through the week to design your album, to post-produce your album, and also to sell a final product. So actually you can double and triple your income if you're doing it that way. Now there's various ways to do it. Obviously you need good photographic equipment. You have to do it right. You have to light it right. It has to be lit completely different. Your posing style has to help you. At the same time, we need good software in order to put it together. We need for using speed lights, I use speed lights a lot. What are we using on those speed lights to soften that light so we cut down the amount of editing that has to do as far as repair work. So to me, Photoshop and some of the filters is not there to repair, it's just there to enhance. So we have to get it out of the box first, and then we take it to another level. So we're going to move forward now, and hopefully we have some questions as we move along. Okay. Now, the program has some images. At the same time, once the images were set, you're going to look at the final, let's say, composite. It is somewhat of a full wedding, not complete. We don't have time for the whole complete one, but this is just enough to give you an idea of what the mindset was when we went in there. Okay. So let's go to the next image here. So we're going to photograph to sell. We're going to capture, create the moment, using light, composition, form, shape, and texture. These are things that we hear all the time in the art world, but really we have to take it to that next level in our wedding photography. Why do I say that? Because most people are saying, well, Weddings are there to be documented. We want to photograph it, just photojournalism. Photojournalism is another word for document or documentary. Okay. At the same time, we want to be able to create light and create portraits, which are good moneymakers in the end. Okay. Now, the whole thing about the portrait part of it is that you want to photograph it where it's not like a bread and butter type of image, but maybe mom and dad would like, but something that the younger couple would like, and it would be a timeless piece that would be more on an art world where it's something that you can put somewhere and say it's a wedding piece, but really it's different. Okay, and that's where we want to go with that. Okay, so we need to create the story, create the fantasy, then of course sell it. Now, you know, I'm probably one of the worst salesmen in the world because I'm not a high pressure salesperson. The photography needs to sell itself. All you need to do is just give it a little push. Just give them something where it says, I got to have that. That's all you have to do as far as the image maker. Okay, so here we go. To create bigger sales, weddings are photographed as documentary storylines, portrait storylines. Each set is a story. Each story is part of an event flow chart. Okay, so everything gets broken down into pieces, as you, if you will. Okay, so it needs to be broken down in pieces because we're actually thinking in as a business at the same time as we're photographing. We need to be free and create and all that, but at the same time, in the back of our minds, we have to say, okay, this has to be a set. Now, why does it have to be a set? What are we actually selling? Okay, if we're selling documentary, let's say an album piece or an album page, how many images do you want on that page? Do you want many images? Do you want one? Do you want two? Do you want five? Now, there's no correct answer to that because it really depends on where in the flow chart this falls. Meaning, if it's a ceremony type composite page, it might take more images because we are photographing a lot, but then the storylines could work that way. If it's a portrait, maybe it could be one across two sides, right? So as you're going to see some of these things that are set, and it's done by design. It's done so that the storyline is there at the same time. Everything that goes in there, as a photographer, you're going to get paid for. Okay, so each story is part of an event flowchart, which is very, very important. Okay, so we're going to need to break this down, and I just gave it a few different things here. We're breaking it down as bride or groom alone, bride or groom and family, bride or groom and with bridal party, married couple together. Each set is a story. Each story is part of an event flowchart. Again, okay? So we're always breaking this down so that way we have it all in increments. And for me, once it's done that way, if I have to think back and say, did I miss anything? I can actually go back into the increments, right? And say, okay, everything looked like it flowed. Oh yeah, I forgot one piece. And we can actually go back and we can try to create it. So that way your storylines always have a flow. Are they supposed to be cookie cutter? Absolutely not. They're not cookie cutter setups, but you have to have some kind of a guidance or a fundamental start so that way the whole thing works. Okay, so photographing in storylines, repeat each storyline 3 times, at least, if you can, okay, if you have the time. And the reason for that is, if, for instance, you're photographing a bride, bride and mother, bride and father, and so on, and whatever it is, you do it in 3 different spots. When you're creating that page, the set that was done in, let's say, location A, that's the one that's going to be in that storyline. You're not going to mix something that was photographed in location A and something that's photographed in location B because they don't blend. Because now that page needs to be designed and the color harmony has to be there and the whole flow has to be there. So they don't go together. They have to go into a different flow chart. So automatically you have more pages. Because if it's done correctly, that's what we're looking at. We're actually looking at color theory at that point. Okay? So repeat each storyline 3 times. Use a different background for each set. Change the posing style for each set so it's not a duplicate, but it's a whole different look. So now I got to have it because it looks completely different from this one. Okay? And the idea is to create variety. We have to create variety as much as you can so that way you have possibilities of selling more as it goes. And the whole thing is that the photography really has to sell itself. Okay? So you're really, really working it as we go along. Okay? the same time, we're looking for light direction. When we're into these locations, what's calling us there? It's the light directions, it's the spots, it's you know, the architecture that's there. If the light direction is there, not there, we're going to create it. We're looking for triangles and creating them in our composition so that everything flows together. Creating lead-in lines to enhance your composition. How, you know, what's the entry point, what's the exit point in some of the rules of composition. Lighting the subject to create depth is so important. And it doesn't require a lot of difficult lighting situations or difficult lighting equipment. It just requires us understanding some of the lighting fundamentals to make things work. Okay? Signature style that works for you. I have a signature style that kind of works for me, and I'm constantly enhancing and changing that signature style, and everybody should have that. At the beginning, we're always starting off with a signature style that might be a cookie cutter type signature style, but you always have to create different things and keep trying and keep trying. And that will take you to that other level as far as being able to sell with bigger numbers. And the whole thing is to create as much volume as you can, as long as your album company will take it, okay? Because you know, if you've gone too far, and in some cases I have, we have to reduce it or put more pages up. So we have to do it that way. And your personality should convey enthusiasm and positive energy. So when we're photographing, they feed off you. So we need to go in there and really be positive with everything we're doing, which location we're choosing. And wow, you see good light, you say, wow, that's great light, you look fantastic. Let me do this, let me do that. And everything really comes together because it becomes a great experience. If you're just photographing, just stand there and just, you know, the experience is not there. So it's all a matter of making the experience good and them wanting to cooperate with you, because don't forget, it's really a wedding. It's not a photo shoot. So it has to be a good blend. That's why at the beginning I said, it's a documentary approach with some portraiture, but at the end of the day, we're making a living off this. So we really need to get it together so that it's a win-win situation all the way around. We get what we want, they get what they want, and everybody's happy. Okay? Okay, this is some of the equipment that I use. I use the Nikon D850s, the 70-200, which is a fantastic portrait lens, especially when you're photographing groups and things like that. You can be in one spot. You can photograph 3/4, you can photograph close-up, all being in one spot. If you're on a tripod, if you know that you're going to be there for a good 15 minutes, you can use 2 speed lights, one on each side, diffuse with some gray modifiers, and away you go. Okay, so you just work it from there. You can actually control your ratios right through the camera, and you can go to a 2:1, 3:1, 4:1 right there, and depending on what you're doing. Okay, the 24-70 is your go-to workhorse lens. The 105 1.4 fantastic portrait lens. It's more of a specialty lens, but it's great. It's a good portrait lens. And then there's that 14-24 for some of that wide-angle type photography and/or some of the event documentary ceremonies, receptions, and things like that. So everything has a use. I have about 5 SB5000s now. I can do a good 4 to 5 light setup with 5 battery-powered lights, and it looks like you photographed it in a studio, providing that it's all set up right. You have the good modifiers. Right now we're using Westcott modifiers for these speed lights, and away we go. Now, that's in the photography part of it. And then after that, then we're going into the enhancement part, which is obviously we're using some Photoshop to enhance, and then we design our albums with the Fundy software, which we can create all kinds of different layouts, which is really, really good. Okay, so let's look at some of the images. And what happens here is you're going to look at images that are completely uncropped. These are the way it was photographed out of the camera. The reason being is that I don't crop them at 100% in the camera. I already have a pretty good general idea. The reason is I don't know what I'm selling yet. Am I selling a horizontal book? Am I selling a vertical book? Am I selling a square? I have no clue. So that way it gives me the option to be able to crop accordingly. Now we're using a D850. The resolution's fantastic. At the same time, I'm learning to crop, and I crop everything horizontal. So if I need to make a square, I'm just losing a part of it. If I need to make a vertical, we're just cutting right in. So it really doesn't matter. So it gives us the option to do what we want depending on the layouts. So here's one of them. This is the first one, and this is what it looked like in the end. Okay, so this was, in this case, would have been the first or second page. The first page probably would have been the some of the details. Okay, so a lot of people will spend a lot of time doing details. I don't spend a lot of time doing details because, you know, if I find available light or some artificial light, we can get it done relatively quick, and we have a layout for that. So here's your first one. Then after that, as we're going into storylines, now we're in the same location. Let's say we have bride and mum in this case, and we have bride and mum again with some detail, okay? Then we have bride and mum again, other detail. The difference is one's looking at the mirror, one is looking down. And then once we put it together, then we do something like that. So that way it creates a storyline of 3 pieces in there. So in the old days, we would probably sell 1 to 2 images. Now we can sell 3 images or 4 images. Does it matter the size? No, it doesn't. Because what we do is we sell the left side and the right side, and then the left side and right side come with an image each. And if there's more images, then they're paying for the additional images there, because we are enhancing and producing and all that to put it there and designing. So they need to be billed for that at the same time. And I got caught with this years ago when digital started, where I had people coming in here and saying, well, in the contract it says you have 40 prints in an album. We want these 120 prints in the 40 sides. And it wasn't in the contract that it came with so many images. So the contracts now come with so many pages with so many images. So that way, they can't do that to you anymore. Because then what happened is our enhancement department ended up costing us 3 times what it was supposed to be costing, because now we're doing 120 images on 40 sides, and we couldn't walk away from it. Okay, so it's all about that in the contracts. So now it's all changed, because of course you learn and you keep going from there. So here's another one. Here's another image, bride and flower girl. Here's another one with the same bride and flower girl in a different pose. Now in the old days, you probably sell 1 if you sold anything. Now we have bridesmaids. This is full crop, and this is what it looks like in the end. Okay, so now we have a complete storyline. Okay, so now we've sold another, we sold 3 images on this complete layout. Okay, so that's basically the approach, is that we are constantly looking for different spots, and we just keep moving from there. Now in this particular case, we changed to the other side of the room, and we use a different light source. Okay, so we did 1. We did another one. Now she's looking at the camera, the other one's looking down. Then we did 2 up on a page. So one's looking down as a vertical, we went across on the other side, it's a horizontal, and we're just creating different things so that the album completely doesn't look the same all the time. We have different layouts, and the whole idea is not to make the layouts very, very busy, okay? Because the point is that they have to look at the image for the impact of what it is, and not the impact of a clutter of many, many images in that page. So then we go to the next one, and this is what it looked like as far as when it was photographed, and this is what it looked like in the page. So it's more Hollywood style. It was photographed with continuous light, turned it into black and white. You could see the streak of the light and all that. So what does it do? It makes it completely different. So if I go backwards a page, same spot. It looks in color, it's a different look. This one here, black and white, looks completely different. You have the capability or the chance of adding 2 more pages, okay, in the end, just by giving it a twist. All right, so here we go. We're going to move forward, and now we're in the hallway, and it's a staircase, and you can see on the left and the right, there's people watching, all that. That's, you know, that's a wedding, and we're moving quick. Time is of the essence, and she's looking down, and this is what we did with that. So we cut people out. We have great impact lines. We got good lines coming through all the way there, and there's your impact point, and away we go. So we have, in this case, we sold this 1 image on 2 pages, okay? And that would be the whole point of what you're trying to do. Is it because we're doing anything that's not supposed to be? No. What we want to do now is, how are we going to make that image look at its best in these albums, so that way every album completely looks different? The next wedding you do, it won't look like this, because you're in a complete different house, complete different location, complete different couple, and that's what happens. Okay, so we're going to move over to the next image, and this is what I saw. It was photographed with a 2470. It was just ambient light, window light coming from a skylight. That's all that was happening here, and there was this piece on the wall. So I just placed her there, and I thought, I got to play with this piece. I couldn't go over to the left. The staircase was in the way. I couldn't center it, and this is what I came up with in the end. Okay, so we can come up with that. So you can actually play with this, you know, based on crops and all that to make things look, the pages look that, to have impact. That's what we want, we're looking for impact. So here's another one. As we're walking around, a dark room, just a window, and I'm thinking, okay, we need to create variety. We're moving as quick as we can. We're taking equipment down at the same time, so we're using window light as much as we can. So here's one image. Here's another image. So we have one looking out, one looking down, and then we have an image on the left and the right, so that now we have another complete page. Well, what is it that I'm trying to do is create variety? Okay, if I don't go there, then the odds are that we're not going to sell as much because we didn't photograph it. So always look for variety, different spots. Some people might say, you know, that's a little bit too dark. That's fine, but we have some other images that are not as dark because we're always moving around. Okay, so here's another one. Now we're leaving the house. I mean, there were a lot more images to this wedding, and I'm just making it move rather quickly. So we're leaving the house. It's all document. There's no posing, no structuring. Here's one. There's two. We're fighting light at the same time. We're fighting this direct sun. And here's three with the bus, and then four inside the bus, five inside the bus. Now, what are we going to do with these images? Are they sellable on their own? Not a chance. No way. They're not putting it on one page. But if you put it together with something else, now you have the opportunity to sell, you know, in this case, it would be 5 images on 2 layouts. Okay? Now, this is when you want to group things together. This is the opportunity that you're going to get an opportunity. At the same time, it looks good, and we're actually utilizing images that in a lot of ways would never be used. Okay? And that's the way you're going to have to actually make that work in your flowchart. Okay? So here's another one. We have a ceremony image coming up, and another ceremony image coming up. Then we have them together and we crop them up, and you have a left and a right. So images like this that are more important, they're going to be left and right. Now here's another one. This one is bride coming up with her brother in this case, and this is the way it's going to look like in the layout. So now we put it across 2 layouts and used 3/4 page to this. Okay. So now at this point, we have another set of images. We're going to have like 4 or 5 images here. I think this is 3. I don't remember now, but we'll have a look at it. Here's 1. Here's 2. Here's 3. Now, what's going to happen? Are we going to be able to move some of these images? Probably not, unless you can create another storyline that's within the pages. Okay? So, and this is what it looks like. And it looks like that. So now it's a complete page. So now it looks finished. Okay. Now, some of the things that we want to be careful of is a lot of times you don't want to see a lot of white or a lot of black. So you want to kind of mix it around. Have some that have multiple pages, some that don't, so that way the images do look bigger. So pick the ones that are more important, let's call it, and make them bigger images or full spreads across. So now at this point, we have this image, right? So we're in the ceremony, and let's say these are all the important parts, the ring exchange on both sides. Here's another one with the ring exchange again, and then there's the final with the kiss when it's over. So you have 4 images. So in this case, we'll make a great design to put all these 4 images together, and this is what it looks like. Okay, so now it's a complete image again. So what have we done? We have 2 pages with 4 images. So the 2 pages come with 2 images, and then we're adding additional 2 images in there. So what we're doing is we're actually creating more revenue at the same time. At the same time, creating work, and we're creating a product that is going to be a little different than just a cookie cutter type product. So it makes it different every time. Are you going to do it the same way every time? Absolutely not, because it's always completely different. Okay, so I'm going to move forward now, and we're going to be in a portrait session after the ceremony. Of course, there's other images that should be there, but I pulled them out for the sake of time. And let's just go into another part here. So we go to another spot for portraits. Now, I picked on this wedding here because this wedding was a pretty good example of a nice couple. We had good flow. At the same time, we really had very limited time. It was very, very limited time. I think the portraits after the ceremony on this location, if we took 40 minutes tops, and we did the, you know, bride and groom in this case, bridesmaids, so on and so forth. So we did a lot of imaging, but in a short amount of time. That included the house too, because for whatever reason, we ended up with a limited time to photograph that. So what happens is adrenaline kicks in and you're really moving from spot to spot. So all of these spots really should be in your mind, and you should be there before everything starts and say, okay, location A, B, C. If something goes wrong, that'll be A, that'll be B, and I'm going to eliminate C. If we have a lot of time, we're going to go A, B, C, D, right? And that's basically, you know, you'll have a game plan going in. Now, as far as portraits after that, it's the same thing. Pick your best spots and then start working your other spots if you have time. If you don't, at least you've taken care of yourself and you've given them something that they can put in their books, and that's something you're giving yourself something, an opportunity to sell. Okay, so here's a couple of images. So we have a left, and we have another one here, and then we did a left and a right. So some of the images now are going to be full, and then you're going to see that in a lot of cases we either gone 2 pages or we've gone to a multiple. So here's another one here. Here's a single image. So because I did the other ones on the left and the right, I thought, okay, let's break this up so that way we don't always have a left and a right. And this is how we completed that. So we did a full page right across. Okay, so we're always looking to break it up so it's not always the same layouts, because I've had, you know, when I first started with layouts at you know, a number of years ago, we tend to go with the ones we like. So the 1, 2, 3, 4, or the 1, 2, or anything like that. And then what will happen is your clients will look at it and says, you know what, I'm starting to see the same ones over and over again. So in theory, what are they telling you? They're telling you, this album's starting to look the same. I'm looking at layouts instead of looking at images. So we really have to slow down and say, how do we design this so that they're not going to come at you that way? Number one. Number two is, what's going on out there in the retail world? There's a lot of people, a lot of companies that have basic templates. So the client thinks they can actually get their own books done by throwing images in templates. Well, we have to take it to another level where we actually have to give it some thought so that it's more about the art of it and how we've a professional look to it than just throwing images in templates. Okay, so here's another one in front of another spot. As you can see, they're always in different spots. And here's another one from the different spot, and another one from the different spot. And then we ended up with something like this. So that way now we have 3 up. And as we have the 3 up, then I might change. As soon as I have a 2 and a 3 up, then I know I have to get into something else. I don't want to keep that momentum going. So here we go. We have this image here. And what are we going to do with it? So we have a few different choices here. We can shoot it, keep it as a full length. If we have other full lengths, then you say, okay, we don't have to keep it as a full length. We can actually throw it across 2 pages maybe. Maybe we can make it a black and white. We can do different things where the album will have impact and it'll be a little bit different. So in this case, what we did is we did that. So now we just completely different. Okay, so that we're constantly throwing little bombs in there so that it constantly has changes where we're creating impact points, right? So visualize it as if you turn a page and you say, not bad, not bad, oh wow, not bad, oh wow, right? Because not every one of them could be a wow. But as you're doing some things that you have to do, call it bread and butter documentary, you have to throw a firecracker in there somewhere. And you got to keep throwing the firecrackers in there so that way it stops it right on the spot saying, wow, that really looks good. And that's what they're going to remember more than the bread and butter ones, okay? If you only have documentary bread and butter ones, what happens to this? You turn it, you turn it, you turn it, and that's all you're basically doing. You can just keep going like so, and it doesn't matter. So you have to have impact points or images that have a lot of impact in order to do this. Okay, so here's another one. This is photographed with continuous light, and it was a very dark area, so we actually balanced what was going on in there. So it's very straightforward. Then in this case, I did the two of them together. They're uncropped in this case. This would be full crop. And then we put it into a layout of two to keep it, has some impact point, and just to keep it simple. Okay, so it's very nice, soft images, and it was very easy to create because it was just continuous light in a darker area. So we can actually balance light at the same time we're balancing for the skin tones in the front, which is very important. Okay, so we have another one now. We went into a complete different spot, which is like around the corner from there, and we said, okay, we can't always have moody, dark, looking away type images because weddings really are not about that. That part of it is more about the portrait thing where you're going to throw the wow factors into some things. Then you have to have the bread and butter images, you know, the couple looking at you, smiling, things like that, that are very easy to do in a lot of ways because it's very basic composition, and as long as they're smiling at you, it's very easy to put it together. So in this case, here we go. I'm not showing the full crop ones. I'm just showing a final now. So you could see that in this case we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 images on this layout. Okay, and it just fills it all out. Now we could have gone with the two bigger ones. That would have been it, or we just keep going where we have bride and groom by themselves and the bride and groom together in the middle, and away we go. So as we're in the same spot, now we should have a set that's more full length and walking. Now, in the documentary style of full length and walking, a lot of people will follow the couple for blocks, trying to get that right documentary walking around type image. Well, I figure you're better off to set this up, right? Get them to walk 10 feet in front of you, stop, go backwards, do it again. So you photograph them from the back, turn around, photograph from the front, and what you're going to do is you're actually going to control where you are, what light you have, and you're not fighting light, and you actually get this done very quickly where you can do all of these images within no more than 5 minutes. Okay, and now you have walking documentary, laughing at each other, you know, all that kind of thing that people walk for blocks trying to get. Okay, so it's done very, very quickly. Don't forget, this session of images was done in a very short amount of time. Okay, between the bride and groom together, the singles, the bridal party, all of this, you know, if I remember correctly, if we were there 40 minutes, that was a lot. By the time we got, and we were flying, it was all adrenaline. Okay, so here's another one. Here's another set, bride and groom together, different spot, different location. We're always looking for light that's coming from different angles, and we're trying to use light that is there because we're trying to move as quick as we can. It's very important to move as quick as we can, get as much variety as we can, but at the same time, we need to follow some lighting fundamentals that work. In this case, this is ambient light or window light. We're coming through windows, so I mean our white balance is good. We have good light direction. Everything is working for us, and this is pretty straightforward. So we have a left and a right there. Now, when we were photographing this wedding, the whole point was that we were going to photograph in this particular area, but in this location, there's an outdoor area that's beautiful. We never had the time to get there. Okay, just another 15, 20 minutes if we had. But we were so far away from the reception event center that we needed to get there by a certain time. So at least we were able to get a lot of variety, and that's the case. Okay, so here's another one. Now we have the two of them together. You notice we have a 1, we have a 2, or we have a, you know, let's say 5 images on each page, and then we throw in the wow factor 1 across just to break things up, and the momentum is always broken. Okay. So here's another one here. And we have another one. Now all the light's coming from the back, so we're creating some drama with this. Wide angle lens and just creating a different look. Okay, and here's another one here. Now that one was kissing, this one's looking at each other, and that's what's happening there. So we're always creating different looks as much as you can. Now, of course, this is not a complete wedding here. I'm picking on certain parts, which in this case we picked on the home part, some of the ceremony part, and in this case it's some of the portrait part with a little bit of documentary. and so on. So from there, then you go into a reception mode. Let's say in this case, we're going to go into reception mode now and just look at some of the things that we're going to look at there. So here we go. We have our reception mode. We photograph all of these things in a very short amount of time because in most cases, people are starting to come in. You want to be able to photograph all this before people get to it, right? And in this case, we photographed some engagement portraits, and there they are. So that's great advertising pieces for us, okay? You know, and all the little details. So that's okay to photograph and great, you know, have a good layout. Now, from there, then you go into our reception banquet hall and some of the details in that, okay? Now, a lot of people spend a lot of time and a lot of images doing this. You don't need to do that much, okay? You just pick some spots, enough that's going to fill up your pages, and move on to something else, okay? So in this case, here we go. We have the tables, okay? Some of it is lit with continuous and continuous light that's balancing with the available light that's in the room. Some of them we threw a flash on it, so we put a speed light on it, balancing with the rest of the candles and all that that's in the room. So we're actually trying to keep the color harmonies very, very close together, and we've made a whole double layout on that, okay? And all we're doing is just adding more things to our album pages. Okay, so now we are starting our reception part of it. Now, in our reception banquet halls, we don't, we use multiple lighting in the reception banquet halls. So in this case, we may use 3 or 4 speed lights. We'll have some on the background, one on the camera, one as a main light. And basically what we do is we go at it like a 4-light system where we might have one as a background light, one as maybe a separation light that's creating separation like a hair light, and a main light and a fill light. We can use them all on TTL or on manual. With these units, you can go on TTL and as long as you're in control, you can actually light and separate things all the way across. What's happening is you could see that everything is actually balancing. You can see that there's a hair light there also. So it's all separated, and what it does is really gives you a pop all the way through. It's not something that you're expecting a speed light to go up, hit a ceiling that could be brown, let's say, at 30 feet up in the air and come right back down and light it up with directional light. If that's what you're expecting, it just can't happen, okay? So you can lower your ISO. You can go to 400 or 800. I usually don't pass 800 ISO, just enough to light up our background and that our speed lights are lighting up the skin tones. And the reason why is that we want to be able to print it. Or what we're going to get here is we're going to get contamination, and it's going to be very hard to print. So our strobes need to hit the faces. What happens back here, if it's continuous light or whatever it is, it doesn't really matter, okay? As long as there's depth and it works. Now for us, we use a lot of lights back there in order to create depth with strobes, and if we don't, as long as the skin tones are being lit, we're good to go. Okay, so here's some more, and a lot of times, you know, those backlights might not be firing, but you can see actually in this case here, we have, you know, a main and a fill on this, and then we have some good separation lights that are crossed in the back because some of these rooms are large. So light needs to hit something. Okay, so in this case, it's hitting subjects back there, and what is it doing? It's creating depth. And we're able to sell, in this case, 3 images right across, and we're just telling more stories. Okay, so we want the album to be pleasant, and at the same time, we want it to have impact. Okay, here's another one. This is through the speeches. As you can see, it's multi-lit all the way across, and if you look at the speeches, you can see that there's highlight shadow, modified nose loop, and you can see that there's a fill light going on. At times you can see, here's a light on this subject. You can see that there's another light coming across with a different light direction on the bride and groom in the background. So what are we doing is we're creating depth and we're creating images that could be balanced all the way across. If you're the pro and you're going in with multiple lighting, and you have somebody else today that might have the same type of equipment, if you're bouncing a light off a ceiling and the uncle whoever is bouncing light off the ceiling, are the images going to look different? They're going to look exactly the same. So what we need to do is light them, that it has to be lit and you're the only one controlling it with your radio controls. In our case with the Nikons, they have their own transmitters, and we can control how are the exposures, where the lights are. If something's in the way, we can drop the exposure right down where it's not going to affect us. So we're in 100% control no matter where we are if we're using 3 to 4 lights in those type of situations. Now the lights could be further back into the rooms, which is okay. If you're photographing at 800 ISO or even 1600 ISO, those speed lights have enough juice to come across and light up what we need to do. Okay. And here's another set with the cake images. Now a lot of times maybe you'll sell one cake image. In this case, we want to design it so that it has impact. So here we go. We have 1 and 2 and 3. So we have looking at the camera, looking at each other. Now they're giving each other a kiss. So it's the same set over and over. We're doing things like that continuously so that way we have more variety coming through. At the same time, this was lit with at least 2 lights. Actually, I remember there's another one that's coming across, and it's just very, very lightly in the back, okay? But there's 3 lights on this. So that's important to do. It doesn't take very long to do, especially with today's technology with TTL. It's so easy to do. It's just understanding where you want your light power to be set at, and you can move very, very quickly, okay? And if you want to follow, you're welcome to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And this is the actual addresses for that. And I guess we're open for questions.
Yeah, we're definitely open for questions. If anybody's watching at home, watching on Facebook, feel free to type on in your question. Does anybody here in the audience have one?
Can you explain more about your pricing per images and per pages? Because typically some people who sell albums by pages or by albums. How you combine this all?
What we do is, that's a very good question. What we do is obviously at the beginning we'll have a contract that has, let's say, an album that's built into the contract. Let's say it comes with 40 images, okay, with 40 sides, left, right. Now, when they come back, and it could be even square, let's just throw a package in the air. And they can come back now and you're going to show them a beautiful horizontal book with a designer album from, let's say, one of the Italian companies. I deal with one called Album Epica. And so, you know, they have 9x13s, they're beautifully across, and they have bigger ones, or they have 1620s that open up the other way. So it depends on the design you're going for. So now you're in selling mode where you say, do you want this look or do you want that look? Now, once that happens and you're in a specific contract area and you say, all right, this couple wants, I mean, the average wedding now would say, I would say need about 60 sides and 100 to 120 images. Okay, if your contract is starting at 40, now we have 60 sides, so now you're going to add 60 more pages. Let's say your pages are 913, could be, you know, let's call it $50. All right, per side, because now you have to work it. They're large, you know, they're designer books, and in there, realistically, some people will say $50, not a chance, but somebody's got to design this, and somebody has to enhance the work, right? So we have to go put it through processing, Photoshop, and all of that stuff is in the mix, okay? Then they say, all right, in these 2 layouts that come with 2 images, I want to put 2 more images on each side. Well, then you have to charge for the image. Now, you've charged for the page already. So now you may charge for the image. The image could be $15 each, let's say, right? And they'll say, well, it's just an image. Well, we don't just grab an image from nowhere and pop it in. We have to take it. It has to be processed. They have to be balanced in skin tone. They have to be balanced in color. Everything has to be balanced so that way when it goes to printing, everything matches. So this is not an easy job to do. We have to make sure that our time is paid for. So then you charge, let's say, I'm just going to throw a number in the air, $15 a piece. So it's $50 a side plus $15 per image on top of the 2, right? And that's basically how I would work it. That would be a fair approach as long as the math works properly. I can't throw a price in the air because everybody charges differently based on their business model, and all the business models are different. So there's no set going price, let's say, because we're not a car manufacturer. We produce, and I might have a small office, you might have a big office. So your overhead might be $10,000 a month, and mine will be $2,000 a month. So our models might be completely different. So that's how you're going to figure out what the charging is. But as long as you meet your obligations and you're following a proper process, we're good to go. Does that answer?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm doing almost the same, but my feeling last 2 years, it's look like model for sale. Like you promise people, you will get this size of album, for example, 20 spread album, like it's 100 images per this
Yes.
one. And at the end, to try to upsell them.
Yes.
And because they're already exhausted, like a wedding is done, like it's a time done, is it better to sell credit for album?
I see what you're saying. The way I usually start it out, and I tell them to do the initial work, is they can either view the images online under password. Some people still asking for paper proofs, and I don't mind doing that. They're going to pay for that. And what I get them to do is, I want them to go through every storyline section, which means if we're in location A and we photograph this whole storyline here, then we have to break it down to the best ones of that storyline, of every set. If it's bride alone looking down, pick the best one. Bride alone looking up, pick the best one. Bride and mother looking down, pick the best one. Bride and mother looking at camera, pick the best one. So now you're down to one of every section. Now you go to location B in the same house, do the same thing all over again. Location C, same house, do the same thing all over again. Now what happens is from a stack of this, which is overwhelming, okay, now you're going to come down to a stack of this. Once you're into a better stack of the best ones of every location group, then it becomes easier to create storylines because they're already set. You already did it when you photographed it. You already decided where the storyline was going to be. It was in that location. There's storyline 1. You might have 3 pages from location A, okay? And that's how it's going to happen. Now, if we go ahead and do some smaller layouts, remember what I was saying, some smaller layouts with 2 up, some might have 1 on each side, then the other one could have a pan right across from left to right. That's the wow factor, right? And that's the only way you're going to be able to upsell is by saying, I love that, I got to have it. I got to have it. And that's the only way that works. You can't just say, well, I want you to buy 120 prints. They're not going to do that unless it's designed and they can visualize. People are visual. A lot of people can't imagine what you're thinking. So sometimes you're going to have to show them a couple of layouts to say, this is what we can do, and I can put this here and there and get them excited and make a great sample that you can show them, say, see, this is a pretty good indication of what we can make it look like.
Hi, yeah, I kind of touched on this earlier. I was going to ask you, do you mostly just sell albums, or do you sell albums and files? And if you're only selling, or do you have to buy an album with your service? Because for my own purposes, I mostly just sell files, and then I add on an album as an option. And that allows most of them pick an album, and so that way if they go through the files, they choose their favorites as a general guideline. It helps a bit of an upselling. I'm trying to get to the point where I'm only selling albums. Is that something that you do, and how do you get to that point?
That's something that I do because that's what I want. Mm-hmm. The odd time, in today's world, we have to be able to adapt business-wise with a perceived approach, which is some people think that they can do their own printing, which is not true. Because most of these labs have their own profiles, and if they're not set up for those profiles, we know what they're going to look like. So if it is to the point where we say we're going to charge for a session. In the session, you're getting so many files in this session. but you're showing them this is what it would look like if we produced it, because now you have to kind of bring it back. And you have to give them a wow factor and something that you're going to produce that they won't be able to go online and just drop prints into a template. And that's how you're going to get it there. It has to be completely different from that department store approach. Okay? So basically, I'm not sure if my approach has always been, I'm going to say it this way, is that whatever a department store sells, I don't. And if they sell, you know, this type of a layout, I'm going to go into a different layout and make sure that it has a wow factor. Yes, you're going to get duped, and then you're going to have to, you know, keep changing. The one thing that you have, that we all have, is that we're the ones photographing. We have the vision. We know what to do as far as layouts. We know what we wanted when we went in there and photographed with a specific flow chart. Of course, you have to be open for creativity because it's all about that, right? But if you have a certain guide in your mind, I know for a fact for me, if I go in and I go into you know, a weird mode, let's call it, and I go into this really, you know, moody type thing, if I don't remember to go back to the bread and butter thing, I'll forget all about it. I'm gone. So because I'm structured, I'll remember to do it. And a lot of times I may start that way and then go into that other mode so that way I don't forget. But going back to your thing about going to that route, I would suggest that it's probably better for them to come back to you and sell only products that they're not able to get, right? So, you know, for me, I import my albums from Italy. They do not sell their albums to the consumer. We also know that they only deal with pros and they set at a certain profile. Excellent. They can never say they're getting the same product. Yeah. And that's the only way to do it.
Yeah, I deal with another Italian producer, and it's helped me sell actual albums because you show it to them and then they want it.
Exactly.
And then you also have to balance with, well, I also need pictures right away for Instagram and Facebook and so on. So I imagine you have like a limited number. Like
then you
20.
just make those smaller because they're not really asking for large files for that.
Okay.
They're just asking for files. They're not asking for files that they can print 1620s.
Okay.
They just want them for Instagram.
Yeah. Great question. We actually have one from Facebook. Kate McGartland from Facebook asks, do you design the album first and then show it to the clients to upsell the number of images that they receive in the album?
No, I don't. I set it up so that they decide on the images that are going to go in. I go in with albums that are already preset sample albums saying this is basic what we're going to do. The reason for that is they could be set up on a very minimal package, because don't forget, when the clients come in, they don't know what they're buying. They don't know how much money they want to spend. They have a typical budget. They might go see 5 different people and the budgets could be from $2,000 to $5,000. Obviously, the $2,000 becomes the mark. So let's say you started them off at $2,500 or $3,000. Now you want to get them to $5,000 or $6,000. Now we have to take them to another level. So you probably started them in a smaller package, smaller prints, and we want to now take it to the wow factor of larger, different type books. So at that point, then I may show some of their images in some layouts that I might think might work once we get to that point. Of course, before printing, everything gets laid out and put. But you know, it's hard to do. It's hard to do things on spec, because then you're going to end up redoing the whole album anyway, and that takes a lot of time.
Hi, Sam. I was just curious, do you always meet with your clients in person to sell your photos to them afterwards, or do you ever do it over the phone, over email?
That's a fantastic question. I find that if you meet your client, you will do better sales. Okay? That includes portraits when we touch on the portrait segment moving forward, which I'm not going to get into now. If you're in front of that client, they can feel your adrenaline. If you're over the phone or going by email, they feel nothing. They're just looking at images. Okay? So it's about, I'm touching this book, they're listening to your voice, this image is going to be fantastic. Look at the light on this. They're not going to be able to hear you because you're not on the same page, especially on the phone. So, yeah, All right, that's the best way to do it.
Hi, Sam. Thanks for all this
Thank
info. What I heard from you is you said you can sell the small quality of the pictures if they wanted the soft copy, right? If the customer wants the big copy, then what I'm understanding is you have to have 2 files in your database. It depends with your customer's requirement, right?
Well, we have a package that we kind of created because of today's business models that are out there in order to compete. And one of the packages that we out there, it's a session. Let's say it's a wedding session. So we go out there and we photograph the whole session. And what we do is we give them high-res white balance files, non-edited. I mean, nobody's going to go there and edit 2,000 images. If they say that they're edited, that means they're white balanced or they're run through some software where it's batched. But I mean, to create things, I mean, there's a lot of manual work that gets created. That is a set package. And that package ends up like, I mean, for me, it's $3,500 to go out there just to do that, getting nothing other than some white balanced files. They're better off to let me print it. They're better off to let me print it because it just makes sense, right? By the time you work it, you do it properly. I mean, it just has more impact. In the end, they realize it. But at the beginning, they don't sometimes, only because they want to give you the minimum commitment because they don't know. And I mean, they're afraid, right? So they want minimum commitment. So they're going to go with the rock bottom price that they can possibly get just to get you there. And then you have to work it. That's just the way it is, right?
Thank you.
No, no problem.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question if we have any more. Yes.
When you have your clients in and you're showing them the pictures, are you showing them the raw ones you showed us, or are you showing them the cropped ones you've done?
Well, the ones that I show them would be based on whatever we use for visual, which would be, let's call it proving files. So it wouldn't be raw full crop, it would be visual somewhat cropped, okay, which is not what gets used in the end. Again, because we don't know what we're printing, is it square, is it vertical, is it rectangular? In a lot of ways it's horizontal. But it may start off as a square. We don't know. So if it's, let's say we're proofing 4x6 type style, and they're looking for square, then we said, well, this is what it's going to look like, right? And we can either do that online, or I mean on the system, and or if it's on paper proofs, because some people still like that, especially my clients, then I just say, well, that's what it's going to look like. And I grab 2 other proofs and say, there's your square. Right? And that's what we do. Then I might show them, after that we go to another level where we'll show them what it's going to look like, and then they get to proof it on some other software. In this case, Fundy has some good software even for proofing. They also have good software in order where you can see a room and put your portraits up on the wall and you can actually see what it looks like. I mean, things are all there now to take it to that other level. So it's so important to get involved with, having the right tools, starting from proper software, proper, modifiers, proper lenses. I mean, I have a lot of lenses, but I don't have them just because. I have them because each lens does a specific job and has a different look. And when you're fooling around with, I'm not going to say fooling around, when you're in the wedding business, 1 week you could be in a house that's like a mansion. The other week you could be in a smaller, more modest home. So you need the right equipment to be able to create sellable, professional images, regardless of where you are. You can't go up to them and say, hey, listen, your house is a little bit too small. I'm not used to this. I don't know. Maybe we'll come back next week. Can we do that? No, right? So we got to be able to get in there and photograph it and really make things work. That's it.
All right, so that just about wraps up tonight. I want to thank everybody tuning in live, and I want to thank everybody who came in person. Most of all, I want to thank Sam for going and doing this wonderful talk. Make sure that you guys check our social feed, whether it's our Facebook, our Instagram, our Twitter, for the following Nikon TV events, also for the next seminars that we're going to be doing here. Always try and keep up on it because we do try and do them on a monthly basis. So once again, let's give Sam a nice big round of applause.
Thank you very much.
And thank you guys for showing up, and we'll see you later.
Thank you for coming.